Closing out the year with a banger, UFC 310, the final pay-per-view of the year coming up this Saturday. The fight I'm most excited about, the fight I think a lot of people are most excited about, the people's main event in the co-main event. This fight was supposed to be for the welterweight belt. It was supposed to be Belal Muhammad's first title defense against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Belal stubbed his toe, something along those lines.
My foot was a balloon. My foot was a balloon. You want to see it?
He's not fighting. Honestly, this fight intrigues me even more than Shavkat versus Belal. Shavkat Rakhmonov, again, people have been waiting for this guy to fight for the belt forever. I kind of think of him in the same light as Khamzat, as even when he was a contender, when he was very young in the UFC, everyone thought that this guy was destined to become champ. This Saturday was supposed to be his first crack at the belt. He is not getting that shot. But again, I think stylistically, this matchup is even harder for him. Rakhmonov, obviously, we know the numbers. 18-0, 18 finishes, 10 submissions, 8 knockouts. The guy is unbelievable. He's maybe the most well-rounded fighter in the UFC right now, and he has just looked unstoppable since stepping into the UFC octagon. But the man he's fighting is also undefeated. Ian Garry. Talk about a fall from grace. A couple years ago, this guy was almost looked at in the same light as Shavkat. He was an undefeated up-and-coming prospect who people thought had championship material, especially given how young he is. I mean, the guy is still he just turned 27. So regardless of what happens, he still has a very bright future ahead of him. But man, with all these outside of the octagon things with Garry, whether that be in the bedroom or wherever it takes place, I think we've forgotten that this guy is a pretty good fighter. When I was dipping my pen, when I was doing my research for this fight, I knew that everyone was going to be picking Shavkat to win, right? Nearly a minus 400 favorite. I believe it's about minus 360, minus 370, depending on where you look at it right now. But I was a little bit shocked at the takes I'm hearing. I think we're getting a lot of casuals exposed. You see a lot of Shavkat is going to take this guy down in the first or second round and submit him. Going to make it look easy. Going to maul him like he does to everyone. If that's your take on this fight, you're a fucking casual, buddy. This fight is a lot more close than the public is making it out to be. I don't quite have it in me to pick Ian Garry right now, but at his odds, I think he is a live dog coming back a little over plus 300. Again, I think those are very generous odds for this fight, and I'm going to tell you why. So the first thing I'm pointing to is the wrestling department, is the grappling department. Now, people are almost looking at this as striker versus grappler. Obviously, they are pretty well matched on the feet in the striking department, but people are saying there is a clear edge to Shavkat in grappling. And that may be true. Shavkat is a fantastic grappler. I mean, we've seen he's got 10 submissions on his resume. I think he's finished his last 2, maybe 3 fights by submission. So clearly, I mean, this guy is a great grappler. But we got to give you a little bit of education on the difference between a wrestler and a grappler. People saying that Shavkat is just going to come out and out-wrestle him and take him down with ease. There is no evidence to say this is true. We've never seen Shavkat just shooting single, double legs out in the middle of the cage. That's not really his style of grappling, right? He has a Sambo background. We see him do great work in the clinch, great trips, hip tosses. But we've also seen him really struggle to get guys to the ground, specifically in his last 2 fights. Now, again, I think Shavkat, as I mentioned earlier, might be the most well-rounded fighter in the UFC right now. He might have the most diverse offensive attack we have in the UFC right now. His jab is money. He's got a lot of power in that right hand. He throws a ton of body shots. He switches up his attacks. He can throw high kicks, spinning wheel kick. Again, in that work in the clinch, dirty boxing, elbows, a bunch of big knees like in that Jeff Neal fight. I mean, this guy is nasty. I could see this guy becoming champ and being honestly an all-time great fighter at this point. So I'm not taking anything away from the guy. But the way these people are talking about his wrestling is just absolutely ridiculous. Have you watched his last 2 fights? Clearly beating Jeff Neal. Obviously, he got tagged up a little bit in that fight. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But it took him almost till the end of the second round to submit the ghost of Wonderboy Thompson. Did you see that fight? I know Shavkat had an injury, something with his foot or his leg coming into that one. But man, it should not be that challenging to take out Wonderboy at this point in his career. And that whole first round, we were getting boos in that fight. He was just holding him up the cage, Kamaru Usman foot stomp style. I mean, this guy, that was a very boring fight. And in the Jeff Neal fight, even a couple times, he had Neal stunned and then he tried to get him down, and Neal was still able to defend the takedown. So as good of a grappler as this guy is, I mean, he fucking submitted Jeff Neal on the feet. I mean, this guy is nasty. And once he gets you on the ground, he is just nasty with his submissions. Again, the guy's got a huge arsenal of attacks. I'm not taking anything away from him, but we're just talking about this guy as if he's like this Hamzat Islam level grappler. And that is just not true in the slightest. So if Shavkat can't get Ian Garry down, or even another very real possibility, have you watched the guy fight? He's content to just stand and bang with anyone. He doesn't take a step back. He's a zombie. The Jeff Neal fight, even when he got tagged, he was just laughing, walking forward, eating shots the entire night. For as long, I mean, that fight ended with like under a minute left in the third round, so it almost went the distance. But this guy is fine standing and trading with anyone, so there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be okay doing that with Ian Garry. You know, anything you want to say about Ian Garry outside of the cage is fine, and I'm actually going to touch back on that in a minute. But you cannot deny this guy is a very high-level striker. He's tall, he's rangy, very long for that weight class. He's 6'3". I think Shavkat does have a slight reach advantage. Garry's distance management is maybe the best at 170. He always controls the distance. He picks you apart from range. He's got a great jab. Again, a very diverse striking attack, man. The guy throws a lot of kicks, a lot of feints. He really reminds me of Izzy almost with those like feinting the kicks, turning his hips a lot, constant movement, really good footwork. And again, he stays on the outside of guys and tries to fight you at range. So with this fight playing out on the feet, like I see Garry winning a couple rounds. I see Garry being very competitive. Now, if Ian Garry had a little bit more knockout power, I think this fight is a different conversation. Garry is a long dude. He keeps you at range. I got to stop talking about how long this guy is, but he is. And he stays on the outside. And I think that is the key to beating Shavkat. I think, you know, against a Belal, I think Belal would have a tough time getting him down, and obviously Shavkat has a clear advantage in the striking department. But if this is just going to be a kickboxing match, Ian Garry is live, man. I'm not sure Ian Garry has the knockout power to actually put Shavkat away, and that's why I still think Shavkat could get a finish in the later rounds. The way he took damage in that Neal fight and was able to continue walking forward. I know we've never seen him in a fourth or fifth round, so that's another talking point, is maybe his cardio isn't there yet to be a championship level fighter. But you can kind of tell with some of these guys, man, even with like a Hamzat at the end of the third with Gilbert Burns, he was ready to roll. Some of these guys just have that dog in them. I don't care about, oh, he hasn't been in those uncharted waters. We'll take him there and let's see what happens. The quote friend of the program, Tom Aspinall. I think Shavkat is an absolute menace. I do think that even in the third, fourth, fifth round, he will be ready, and I could see him getting a finish in those rounds. But I see Ian Garry winning some early rounds and giving Shavkat a ton of problems on the feet. I know he has put guys away in the UFC, and I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I could see Ian Garry catching him, but again, I just think Shavkat, he took some huge bombs from Jeff Neal, and he didn't even take a step back. He didn't even look like he was stunned once in that fight. I know the one everyone thinks of when Shavkat kind of threw that crazy uppercut, I believe that was in the third round, and then Neal just tagged him. But like, man, he just ate that. So Garry, it's always been more of an accumulation of damage. Timing beats speed, precision beats power. So accurate. Great kicks as well. He put out, who was it? D-Rod with a head kick in the first round. Garry's a stud, man. Again, people talked about this guy so differently a couple years ago. Here's my last prediction on this fight. The masses are going to turn on Ian Garry. Remember how much everyone hated Alexander Volkanovski going into that Max Holloway, or going into the Brian Ortega fight? You can win fans over by just being a dog. And I think Ian Garry has that dog in him. No Izzy. I think he's got that dog in him. And I really think the people, the fans, are going to start to like this guy again after a great performance, after a gritty, bloody war with Shavkat Rakhmonov. Win, lose, or draw, Ian Garry is going to win back some fans. I'm excited to see it. Final prediction. I obviously want to say Garry so badly right now, just to say I told you so. I can't quite get it out of me yet. I might change it again by Saturday. Right now, I will say Shavkat Rakhmonov, fourth round submission. Again, I see Garry winning the earlier rounds. I see it being like 2-1. You could argue either way, but Garry having success on the feet. I could see him trying to, again, he's going to try to stay on the outside and not engage with this guy. That isn't really the way Shavkat plays. You're going to have to engage with him because he's going to keep running at you like a psychopath. And again, They'll both have their moments on the feet. I think Shavkat will struggle getting him down. I could see him holding him against the fence a little bit. Maybe we hear some boos. Maybe the fight is not as exciting at the times as we all want it to be. But I see both men having some success on the feet. I see Shavkat getting this done in the 4th round. Shavkat Rakhmonov, 4th round submission. And then he goes and he beats Bilal Muhammad in a couple months. He becomes the welterweight champion. Ian Garry gets on the mic after. He's bloody, he's battered, and he's got a big smile on his face. He'll probably call out the rest of the welterweight division, and people are like, you know what? I don't care that this guy lets people sleep with his wife. Maybe he is a dog after all.